Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And joining me today on the show is somebody who isn't normally here on a Monday, Harrison Fagan of SB Nation. Harrison, you and I are about to do some vacationing. We're about to do some traveling. I'm flying back home. I don't even know where you're going. And
that's good. That's deliberate.
You have me like changing my plans and meeting up with you wherever it is you're going?
No, I just I don't want to. I know that if I tell you anything, you will just say it out loud on the show, and so I have to keep that in the circle of trust.
Everything is content, Harrison. Content is king. But yeah, so we are recording this, and we're going a little out of order this week. And the good news is, though, Harrison, you and I have something to talk about.
I don't know why you're taking people behind the curtain and saying we did this as a favor to us. We're doing this as a favor to you. I jumped on because the Skinny Luka photos were so pressing that I needed to jump in today. This is an emergency by off-season standards. Emergency pod! Luka lost weight!
I've been laughing at that all day. The amount of debate over whether or not Luka is going to be better off with or without the extra weight that he had last year is the most almost August topic I've ever seen. There's been legit like
I was gonna bring up this counterpoint as a bit, but I didn't realize people were actually bringing this up.
No, I've had a few like sarcasm. Well, I don't know if it's sarcasm, but I've gotten enough of them on mine, and then I've seen like some of the takes out there also of like, well, what happens if Luka can't push guys around anymore? He was somebody who really benefited from being able to push guys around. What, like, should Lakers fans be nervous about this? And I'm like, what? Hold on, huh? Which just like goes to show again, everything is content, right? Like everything is a debate.
This is like the my friend Kylie Chung's joke about like for Harden and Luka, the talent being in the fat. It's like they need the extra girth to get guys to bounce off of them and stuff. And it's like if you lose that, all of a sudden you're losing part of what makes them special. It's you could say the same thing for Zion. It's like a Zion is lethal, as a bowling ball, if wrecking ball combination, if he's not as big. And I think the Pelicans would say we'd like to see. But they
do you think Zion's
they have
watching
not traded
this?
Zion.
Do you think Zion's watching this like closely and like hoping that Luka looks worse because he lost the weight?
I mean, now that you mention it, probably.
He's just watching the first game. Luka like isn't able to back somebody down. Zion's just gonna go to his front office and it's like, see.
It's like new message in the chat, but NBA Body Positivity Association from Zion Williamson. What the hell, bro?
I also love that, like, in this theory of yours and Kylie's, that like Samson's special powers comes from cholesterol. Like it's like it's not. We're nervous about somebody getting better because they're the BP, what was it, BMI is BMI, dropped to a nervous level. But look at these pictures, Harrison. So like this is the one that like kind of caught my attention is Luke. Like that's a I hated that exercise. It always made my back hurt. This one also not exactly great for the back.
Oh my god!
Yeah, look at him.
For the audience, people that are not watching on YouTube, this is going to be a funny segment, so we got to really lay out on the audio.
Oh yeah! Whoa!
Oh my goodness! Wow! my God.
Hey, there's the 42-inch vertical.
Not even a single jiggle in that photo.
By the way, the what is it? Men's Health had to tweak their article because they utilized AI to tell Luka's story, and it spat out a detail that wasn't actually true. I think it was Nick Angstad who caught this, that according to this article, Luka had a 42-inch vertical when he was entering the NBA. And
I'm going to say, if he had a 42-inch vert at the draft combine and he still dropped in the draft, like, I think both the GMs that passed on him have already been fired, but
yeah,
still,
they would be fired again.
Fire him again.
Yeah. No, so that it turns out that detail not true. He did not have a 42-inch vertical.
He will this season though.
Well, yeah, but like the part of it that I kind of like laughed at was he actually was like Adam Modest was on the show, and he actually told this version of the story the way that it should have been told in the article. But while Luka doesn't obviously reach the heights of a 42-inch vertical, he did in the draft process, or as a younger prospect, get off of the floor faster than most, maybe anybody. That like they actually calculate how quickly somebody jumps and how quickly somebody gets off of the floor. And Luka is actually, like, back when he was going through the draft process, the pre-draft process, he actually did really well in that regard.
Yeah, I'm guessing that was at P3. They also, I think it was either him or Harden had the best deceleration speed in like their testing history. And like they're like basically 1 and 2. And so it's, that is a skill that if you watch those guys play, you can see where that comes into play in their games. It's like, being able to stop is also a superpower if you can get people off balance a little bit. And you can see how that sort of flows into their games. And, if he can stop at that speed while also moving a little more quickly before going into that stop, you can see how maybe that would benefit his game, even if he's not, jumping 42 inches in the air.
Or like, when he is stopping, like I actually think, because there's a bunch of theories obviously going around on where this, why the weight loss. I personally, just because I'm petty, would like to thank Nico Harrison personally for not just trading Luka, but also calling him a fat loser on his way out the door. And I would imagine Luka, being a competitive guy, that didn't, maybe sit all that well with him. But I also
want fitness advice from the Division III men's basketball player on how to be better.
Yeah. A shoe salesman, has thoughts and on what it takes to be successful. And he decided to direct those thoughts in a very public manner to a guy who was just in the NBA Finals the year prior. But anyway, I actually think, like, Harrison, do you recall the first time that you noticed that like the aging process on you, like that you like tweak something and it took longer than you remember it?
I started to lose my hair.
No, I mean, like, well, because I still remember I like tweaked my ankle, didn't sprain it. I've sprained my ankle on a few occasions, but I like tweaked my ankle. And I remember, like, growing up, you tweak your ankle and then you keep on playing on it, and then you wake up and it's a little sore the next day, but like it's nothing that's actually going to slow you down. And I remember I tweaked my ankle while I was playing, and I kept playing on it. I just tightened my shoes and kept playing on it. And then woke up the next day and was just actually sore. Like, it actually hurt. And I think that first occurred when I was in my, like, I think I was like 26 or 27, mid to late 20s. And I like mentioned that to Dad, and he's like, yeah, you're aging. you're getting older, and I see how quickly, like, my kids bounce back from stuff where if they wake up with a cough and you give them like a little bit of Tylenol, they just become superhuman all over again. And, you know, over the course of your life, right, it just takes longer and longer and longer to recover from stuff. Luka just sustained his first like kind of long-term injury this last year. And you talked about the breaking and stuff like that. And when you're bigger and you try to put on those brakes and you're trying to slow that much more mass down, it is going to have an impact on those brake pads. And I think
long term, especially too, maybe not even in the moment, but it's like, or the next day or whatever, but you know, it would be something you would worry about in his knees as he ages.
Yeah. So I honestly think that the impetus for this kind of body transformation, it has a lot to do with the injury that he just sustained. That like he went through that and he missed a bunch of time, and then he didn't perform as well as he normally would in the postseason. And I think he's kind of looking at that, and I would imagine somebody around him in his camp, or maybe even it didn't even require it, but he's just kind of like, all right, I'm getting a little older. I only have one prime in my career. I'm approaching it right now. I can't, you know, I can't keep fucking around with this stuff. And it would be really interesting. I would love, you know, because I don't think they really touched on too much of, you know, he says that he wants to you know, be in the game a long time, and he wants to maximize his career and stuff like that. But I would love for him, you know, next, you know, speaking opportunity that he has, to talk about, you know, this process and what went into it, because it would be great if he was just super honest. He's like, yeah, the guy who traded me called me fat. And I was like, I'm not having any more of that. But
I feel like there's no way he would ever be that honest.
Yeah, I know.
Even if that was the real reason. Yeah.
Yeah. But even if it's, yeah, like I would love to hear about this process of because, you know, we just talked the last time that we did the pod, we talked about like living in the now and trying to maximize the now. And this is him doing that in the way that he can. And yeah, I would love to hear about that. The other thing that I was kind of struck by, I haven't seen anybody make this point, is if you put this much work into your body over the course of an off season, and then you hear about how the Lakers are like building for a year or two from now, I'd be a little annoyed. You know, like, well, wait, hold on, what? We're not going for it until next year. Do you
he's getting
like,
his thirst trap pictures done now for like, you know, like for the NBA star Tinder bio for when the Lakers go like star hunting in a trade. You know, he wants to be looking his best and be able to post the men's health angles like on there when Giannis is deciding who he wants to team up with long term.
Well, so you don't think this changes anything with how he kind of would maybe want the Lakers to go after it this year, or get after it this year?
I'm hesitant to say that, just because, I mean, I'm sure he does want them to go for it, but I just, like, you have seen how Rob Pelinka operates. Rob is not doing this plan if he has been in contact with Luka and they're like, if you don't throw everything that you can at the wall to try and win this season, then, you know, we are not going to sign the extension. We're going to leave, whatever. Like, it seems like they're sort of in an agreement that, you know, like, we're going to not slow play this, but we're not going to throw every single thing at the wall for this year. And so that we can take a bigger swing potentially next summer. And, you know, I don't know. Like, it just, to me, I don't think that it changes anything, because we had already heard that he was in the best shape of his life. You know, I don't know. Like, do we think Rob was unaware of what he looked like until seeing the men's health cover? And even then he's like, I don't know. Did they Photoshop it? Did they use AI? Like, did they, you know, do some smoothing? Like,
well, I mean it more from the standpoint of like, look, the amount of transformation that we've seen here from Luka, you look at pictures of him even towards the end of the season when he, like, you know, was actually playing and stuff, let alone when he first got to the Lakers and he first got on the court there, he didn't look healthy, you know, in his first couple of games there.
He hadn't been able to run. He'd been rehabbing a calf injury.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, you go from that to this, that takes a ton of work, right?
Yeah.
A lot of work. And you put that much work into
people joke. they joke about the American cuisine thing. This is not just him not eating American food for a couple months. Like, I'm sure that helped, but you know, it's a little more than that.
Yeah. By the way, Guggenheim, bring over whatever European chef, whatever European ingredients that it took to get Luka to this point here, because and so that we don't need him eating at Arby's during the season. But yeah, the part of this that like I keep on coming back to is he puts all this work in, and his body transforms the way that it does. We know how much work LeBron puts in to maintain the way that he looks year in, year out. And I think that's part of the frustration that LeBron has had with the Lakers is like, I am doing more than my share here, holding off Father Time the way that I have. And yet we just started a playoff series with Jackson Hayes at center last year. So it's like, I do kind of wonder, after Luka puts in this much work to get himself to look the way that he does right now, and then, say at the beginning of the year, because they always do this with the Lakers. They always backlog the Lakers schedule so that they'll have kind of a softer opening. Not so that they have it. They want more eyes on the Lakers playing tougher games later in the year.
The marquee teams are usually the better ones, and they want the marquee games after like the NFL season is over.
Right. So, but that would mean that, usually the Lakers have kind of a softer opening than most other teams. And so you might be looking at a Lakers season, Harrison, that starts, 7-3, 8-2. Luka looks incredible. LeBron hopefully continues to look incredible. DeAndre Ayton is in a contract year, so he probably will be on his best behavior early on in the season. And I would imagine that entire
fat.
What's that?
We've seen LeBron, we've seen Luka. What if Austin just shows up fat?
No, he's in a contract year too. But
I just can't even picture that. Like, imagine out of shape Austin Reeves.
He shows up wearing golf shoes. Like, he just like walks straight off of the golf course.
He looks like he has the body type where he struggles to keep weight on more than like keep weight off,
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I know that like they've been trying to bulk him up, but it's just kind of difficult for some people to do until it isn't. But yeah, the thing that I keep on coming back to with this is like, especially now having seen these pictures, and like, you don't do an interview with Men's Health unless you put in the work, and so like I would, and this has been in the works for a while.
This is a concerted effort to counteract the narrative, because I don't know if you caught this, but the Lakers media relations Twitter account that most of us have like alerts on for, because they send out like press releases, statements, stuff like that from it. They retweeted the Luka Men's Health article after the Lakers tweeted it out. Like, to make, like, they're making sure that they did everything but release a statement where Rob talked about how great the photos looked.
Yeah. Jen's trying to find my laptop, and I don't know where. I think it's in my backpack. I'll sure that it's in my backpack.
Trying to find your laptop. I believe you're using it to podcast currently.
No. I have a like a Mac that I.
Oh, okay.
Desktop Mac. But gosh, where? Yeah, I'm gonna just hold on. Check my backpack. Yeah. So anyway, sorry. I'm trying to recapture my thought process here. The point that you just made, that like, yeah, the Lakers retweeted it. It was funny too, is NBA PR retweeted it. Like
that's good. I didn't even know that. That's very funny. I didn't catch that one.
So like, that was kind of interesting to me. But yeah, I think, Luka looks great. LeBron, he sent out a IG story today saying how he's getting to work and he's getting ready for next year too. Like, I don't know, Harrison, I'm starting to feel a little optimistic about this team. And I know that's a really scary thing for longtime listeners to hear me say. So, knock on wood, hold on to your butts, all that stuff.
Hit by a car or something, it's like every time.
Like, why why shouldn't I be optimistic about a team with LeBron James and Luka Doncic, a contract year DeAndre Ayton, a contract year Austin Reeves, a contract year Rui Hachimura, they had a solid offseason. Why shouldn't I be optimistic about this team? I keep on hearing about how great the Minnesota Timberwolves are. They had a much worse offseason than the Lakers did, a much worse one.
Well, after shellacking them in the first round, to be fair.
Yeah, but that's true. Yeah. But they got worse.
Yeah,
at a very important position.
Yeah, I'm not. I certainly don't think that the Timberwolves are unbeatable, or I see what you're trying to do, though, is that you're trying to get me to be the antagonistic one, so that you can be like, look, Lakers fans, I'm positive. I don't know why everybody's mad at me.
I'm not. No, are you also optimistic?
Well, no. And so I I mean, define. I guess you have to define optimistic. I don't know. Like I think this team could be. I think this team could win a round or two of the playoffs. Maybe I struggle to see much beyond that. The thing that still has been giving me pause and has been giving me pause all off season is I'm just not sure that the defense can be good enough. I think such a huge part of that crazy defensive run that they went on last year was like desperation. They had to do it to sort of climb up the standings. They had a goal in mind. It's like, I don't know if you can maintain that full sprint for the entire season. And it was also that they were going small so often. And you're not going to be able to do that with DeAndre Ayton, and you're trying to get him acclimated and get him major minutes. And I'm just not, the defense is the part that still gives me a lot of pause, because I'm worried about how they're going to get enough stops on that end. And if they're just going to be able to straight up outscore teams. I'm not 100% sure about that. And I think the defense is probably, I'm not optimistic about how the defense is going to start the year.
I think that's fair. I think here we go. Manny, right, saying I'm a trade away from optimism. I think that's the fairest stance, right? This roster, I think, clearly needs like one or two more moves. Where
I think it needs, it doesn't have to be Rui, but it needs the Rui rotation spot swapped out for a guy who is a defender.
Yeah. We were talking about this before we went on the air, and I don't know that I fully believe even myself here, but the Nets have the cap space to be able to just take Dalton. And with all this noise surrounding Nikola Vučević potentially being waived, not just bought out, but waived outright, to where he would get his full contract, you could just sign him for the minimum.
Is Evan Fournier running the Bulls now? I don't. Why?
Well, all right. Well, we'll get to the why here in a second.
Okay.
But
right.
If you could trade Dalton to the Nets just for a couple of second rounders or something like that, and have him just go into their cap space, now you get a couple of assets on top of it that you can attach to whatever it is that you want to do later in the season. You could split those assets up if you get 2 second rounders for him. And on top of it, you'd be able to sign Vučević on the minimum, which, by the way, the reason that I would say that, his agent would maybe, by the way, his agent is also Luka's. The reason that the agent might be pushing for, and a lot of these agents are pushing for buyouts now versus in the season, is because more teams can sign that player once the season starts.
Second April restrictions. Yeah.
Right. Once the season starts, any team above the first apron can't sign a buyout candidate. So right now,
that was making more than the average salary.
Yeah. So any player, right? Any player who's making more than the median salary, whatever it is, which is essentially like the non-taxpayer mid-level exception.
I was going to say, I feel like Vuč is probably making more. Right?
He is. He's like 20-ish.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 to 25. But if you have a client who's making that much, you're there. Those agents are actually pushing for those guys to get bought out now, while you have that many more teams that could make a bid on you. And then also look, like one of the best ways, one of the paths to not being seen as a minimum player from that point forward is to get on a good team and do some winning with that good team. And most of those good teams sit above the aprons. And so you want those teams to be able to bid on you so that you can get on potentially a playoff team, maybe even a finals team, and you can bolster your market that way. So yeah, I believe all of this noise. There's been because the Bulls have been trying to trade Vučević all summer, and I think they're kind of kicking themselves for not trading him last year. But now, because the I think the consensus thinking going into the summer and maybe the last couple of summers was that a player would actually gain more value when their contract becomes an expiring contract. But that's not actually the case. A lot of these teams, and it's like I've been saying all summer, a lot of these teams have basically just said, no, we'll just wait because we know you're going to buy him out. Or you're going to waive him. So a lot of these teams are just like not holding trade negotiations for some of those guys because they would just rather wait and see that player bought out or waived, as we saw with DeAndre Ayton earlier this summer too. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and it's like Pete always says, expiring contracts have value at the deadline, not during the off season, when it's closer to the end of the contract, and you can just take that in, and that you know where your team stands probably in the hierarchy, or you have a better idea of it, and you also know that, okay, this player making long-term money is not in our plans. Let's swap him for more cap space this summer, essentially. And so I think like those expiring trades are not going to happen right now. It would be like if they were going to get bites on him for that reason, then it would be at the deadline.
Right. Well,
but they may not want to do the we're going to have a disgruntled guy here all year and he's not happy. And we know that he's not part of our future plans. And, who knows, maybe we want to do the agent a favor. I don't know who else his other clients are beyond Luka, if he has any Bulls guys that they would care about. But they're,
Bill Duffy, he's a pretty big agent.
Yeah, so sometimes that stuff comes into play, and you want to do right by the power agent that you think could maybe help you out down the line. But, and especially if you don't think that the guy's in your long-term plans. But, I also my bigger thing with this is not the feasibility of it. It's more I don't know if we're doing your hypothetical and we're saying the Lakers trade Dalton into cap space and for an attached seconds to get the Nets to take on his salary, which is sad sentence to say that we're there with Dalton, that you got to get somebody to they need an asset to take on his rookie contract, given where he was last year before the Mark Williams trade. But if you're going to do that hypothetical, I don't know that Vuč makes you better enough to be worth attaching assets to Dalton rather than just trying to go into the season and seeing if
no, I'm not attaching assets to Dalton. I'm getting a second rounder.
Oh, I thought that you were saying attach seconds to Dalton to get the Nets to take on. Okay.
No, I don't. Dalton's value is low, but it's not there.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
I don't think he's a negative asset. I think he's.
I wouldn't do that. It's just there's a better chance that he plays well, and you're at least able to flip him for neutral value.
Yeah. No, I think there's a world so heading into the summer, I know Lakers fans were really kind of hoping that he would still hold first round value. He did not. No. And I would say after really bad summer leagues, it's dipped even further. But I do think he would probably fetch a second rounder if he was just traded into cap space. And I would do that. It would suck to trade him at a low point, but if it means that you have a shot at bringing in the best backup center that you could possibly get in the free agent market. And look, if you do
I can't believe you're forcing me to argue for Jackson Hayes here, but does Vuč upgrade your rotation that much over him for in the minutes that he'll play and given his defensive shortcomings?
Yeah,
because he's a worse fit with Luka. He's not. He's like a fake 3-point shooter. He can't defend. He is a decent rebounder, But, I just don't know that he gives you that much of an improved dynamic as like the Ayton backup to be worth just like giving up on Dalton and not seeing if he can turn himself into at least something of an asset.
I
Now,
mean,
maybe not first round value, but it's something where the team is at least happy to be using his salary as the ballast instead of Gabe or whatever,
yeah. So he is coming off of a season, Harrison, where he scored 18 and a half points a game. He shot 59%.
I'm
Huh?
just kidding.
Yeah. Maybe on 2K.
It's like, oh, wow, he was better than I realized.
Yeah. So you're fairly, I don't know. I don't know that he's a fake 3-point shooter. He shot 40% on 4.5 attempts a game
Teams don't respect him, though, so it doesn't add to your spacing. So it doesn't really help Luka that much. I mean, I guess if the threes go in, it's, it does help, but it's not as big of an ad as you would think because teams still aren't going to like panic about him being out there.
Well, and his minutes would be down, so his attempts would go down, to your point, So that's I think that's fair, but he still shot.
I'm not saying to be clear, I'm not saying I wouldn't sign him for the minimum. I'm just saying I don't know that I would just like dump Dalton to sign him for the minimum.
So here's my problem, Harrison, that I keep having when I talk about Dalton. I am significantly lower on Dalton than I think anybody else talking about the Lakers, any Lakers fans out there. I like people keep, I see the physical tools. I see why you wouldn't want to trade, to sell low on a depreciated asset. I get all of that stuff. But like, we kept on waiting for Jalen Hood-Schifino to turn things around, and eventually, like, he never did. Like, this happens sometimes with first rounders taken in the teens. Like,
to be clear, I wasn't waiting on JHS. I never saw anything where I was like, you know what? I think that guy's a guy that's going to rehab his value.
But Raj did.
Dalton, we've at least seen play strong NBA basketball for like in spurts.
Yeah, but it's like it was early in the season, and the vast majority of his season was ugly. And then like a 24-year-old sophomore looked bad in summer league. Bad. He didn't look dominant. He looked bad in summer league. I can't think of very many older sophomores or sophomores period who looked bad in summer league and wound up being a pretty good player. That list isn't very long.
It's not a good sign. I'll grant you that. I'm not arguing that he's had an incredible offseason. I just don't know that I'm there with him yet, where I think that it's bad enough that you want to just get rid of him for sort of a token asset to then sign, like a 30-plus-year-old backup center who I'm not sure how much is going to impact your team positively outside of the regular season anyway.
Yeah. This is a good question, I think, from Common Sense. Should we be asking what the Lakers scouts are doing to screw up back-to-back first-round picks? It does hurt. I was actually thinking about this morning. I was like, man, sure wish there was more return on those first-rounders that the Lakers, finally used.
And
that's why I'm like,
you can't even say they're quiet quitting because they're billionaires. They were billionaires. These were before they sold the team.
Yeah, right. So I think both are kind of unique situations. The Jalen Hood-Schifino one, there was not consensus on taking him, and I wouldn't go so far as to characterize it as Rob overriding or overruling the scouting department. There were members of the scouting department who liked Jalen Hood-Schifino. There was more consensus on Kobe Buffkin, who was taken right before the Lakers. Like they really liked him. And it was, as the draft was playing out, I was being told, Lakers are taking Buffkin at whatever pick it was, 17.
Rob wants Kobe.
I chuckled.
Yeah.
Look, I will say I laughed when I was getting those texts. Actually, I think we were laughing about it in Slack, right? That night. It was like, I was like, I'm hearing they're taking this guy. And we were laughing about it in the lounge Slack. And then Buffkin gets taken by Atlanta, the pick before the Lakers, and it puts them into a bit of a scramble. And there were some people in the scouting department who liked Cam Whitmore, And there were some people in the scouting department who liked Hood Schifino. Rob, I'm told, liked Hood Schifino a little bit more than Whitmore. And the higher ups were a little scared by Whitmore's medicals, so they wind up taking Schifino. And I think the common theme here, because Dalton Knecht, remember, they told us that they didn't even have Knecht on their radar. They
he was mocked way higher.
Yeah, he was mocked way higher, and they didn't scout him as much as some of these other guys. The people that they did have on their radar, and they did scout a lot more heavily, was Tristan Da Silva, who they liked, and Yves Misi, who I was told that was going to be their pick. And then Dalton fell, and there was a consensus of like, we should just take the best player available. And, so the common theme to me is that like they had a plan going in, and then we're thrown for a loop, and in the scramble kind of, lost the plot a little bit. And I think that is kind of how I would answer like what is happening there, because otherwise it's a very good scouting department that normally, maximizes value with those kinds of picks, and they just have it. Also, drafting is hard.
Had more hits and misses, but which is why I still think that they're above average. I think that they've earned that reputation. But, again, and they would tell you, they have picks they'd probably want back, even if they were ready to blame, Rob for this pick and Kurt for this pick and, this guy for this pick or whatever. They'd even say like, yeah, but I also had like these like 10 guys over the years that were way higher on my board than they should have been, because it's like, again, even if you're like the best scout in the world, you're going to miss some picks. And so it's just like I hearing the JHS reasoning again, it's like, they took Jalen Hood Schifino because they were worried about someone else's medicals is like
sucks.
Yeah. Someone who's like probably played more minutes than Jalen Hood Schifino by quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He'll probably play more minutes this season than Schifino will for his entire career.
Now he's on the Wizards, so yeah, probably.
Yeah. I like Whitmore. I liked him in the draft process, and then I'm not really a big draft guy anyway, but yeah. So like I don't know. I'll wrap on this with the Vučević thing. I think the fairest criticism of those who want Vučević is that the Lakers have never employed a defensive backup, but that player doesn't exist on the market. And he doesn't currently exist on the Lakers roster, unless you think somehow, some way, Christian Koloko is going to supplant Jackson Hayes in the rotation. And I don't see that. So to me, if it's like, I would just go for the talent ad, because I do still think Vučević is still pretty freaking good. And I think he would be especially good.
He'd be good on a minimum. I'm not arguing
15 to 20 minutes a night. Like the way that he shot last year, Harrison, 53% from the field, 59% on 2-pointers, 40% from 3-point range. His free throws, 80% from the free throw line. Didn't get there very often. Still had his, 10
well, if you're
rebounds
shooting that
a game.
Many threes, you're not going to as a 7-footer.
Yeah. He averaged 10 rebounds a game, just, basically under a block a game as well. Like, I don't know. He would immediately become the best backup center that the Lakers have had since Dwight, I would say.
Well, I guess depending on, I guess Mark.
He was a starter. Oh, no.
Yeah,
no.
I guess he was. I mean, he started part of his time.
Yeah.
But that was post-COVID Mark, who wasn't as good. So I don't know. Like, I'd be willing to hear the argument. Yeah, he'd be the best backup they've had in years. I just, again, like, the thing that I just keep coming back to is I think if you're preemptively deciding that you're going to take this first round pick that you wouldn't trade a couple of years ago, and you needed to draft a player, and you were high on Dalton, and JJ Redick started hallucinating plays for him on like the whiteboard in your draft room and all of that stuff. Like, if you're going to have all of that happen, and then you're like, I think now is the time to flip this so that we can sign a 35-year-old Vooch. Like, I just don't feel like that's very good asset management either. And I would rather take the chance that you can go into the year, have Dalton increase his value to the point where he's at least a neutral throw into a trade, which I don't think is that high of a bar to clear for a guy with his shooting ability. And, you know, I think there's a chance that he ends up helping you more this year than like Vuč would.
Maybe. I don't really know where Dalton's minutes are going to come from with LaRavia on the team. I think LaRavia is just flat out better, and I think he's going to be playing some 2/3 minutes. And if LaRavia spends any time at the 2, then I don't really know where Dalton fits into the equation there. And like it sucks to say this, but I just think Dalton needs a change of scenery. Like, he was traded, and I think
could be right.
It's just really clear that he just hasn't really regained his faith or belief in this organization since. And like, I watched him play, Harrison. He looked miserable out there. Miserable to be playing basketball. And he's very much one of those just kind of hooper type guys, you know, who's just like, yeah, I just want to play. Can I just play? And even still, he looked miserable to be out there playing basketball this summer. And I don't know, like, I don't know that there's any way. I'll always remember Lamar Odom. His career was derailed when he was traded, and then that trade was rescinded. And he was never the same after that either. And he's spoken about how he felt betrayed by the Lakers when they had become a family to him, and then they traded him. And he was like, you know, he never really, and I think he went on to say that played a role in the drug use that he had eventually, the depression from being betrayed by the Lakers. Like, it, for some people, it can be a lot. And for Dalton, it's the team that drafted him. It was the team that was just as exciting as you just talked about to draft him. And you had that great run earlier in the year. And then for whatever reason, your season completely fell apart. You get traded, and then it's like, hey, welcome back, bud. And like, you just know that, you know how those people feel about you. So I'm of the belief that I just think he needs to change the scenery. And I'm still hoping for the best for him. I'm still concerned about the basketball IQ with Dalton. And heard or had some stories that I've heard confirmed while I was in Vegas about that basketball IQ. It makes me think, like, I just don't see it with him. But regardless, speaking of changes to scenery, I did want to talk about this, Harrison. The very first thought I had when I saw those pictures of Luka today was how it reminded me. Do you remember when Shaq was traded?
Yes.
Remember how he was traded
by the Lakers, correct?
Right. Or yeah. So he got traded by the Lakers to the Miami Heat. And then I will never, ever forget seeing him on opening night the next season. And it didn't help because Miami wears those black uniforms, right? Which are like inherently slimming compared to the bright yellows that the Lakers were wearing in the early 2000s. And, I remember seeing Shaq on opening night in Miami looking like freaking Orlando Magic Shaq again. And I was so angry. I was so angry at Mr. Company Time getting back in shape after the Lakers didn't want to give him his contract and then eventually traded him. And it made me kind of think, because another example is the Dodgers were always kind of reluctant to trade Yasiel Puig. Because he was such a talented player, and they were always a little nervous that if they traded him, would that ignite him finally figuring it out? And he never did, right? So like in the Puig example, he left the Dodgers and he just kind of unceremoniously exited stage left. And I never had to worry about him looking good for another team ever again, because he just never figured it out. But with Shaq, he did. And Shaq was that kind of transformative, like, talent that if he had his shit together, you were a championship contender. And I think they made the Eastern Conference Finals that first year, and then they won the championship the following year. I think Shaq was an MVP candidate that first season in Miami. And I was just like, God, man, it's so annoying that he and Kobe couldn't figure it out, that Shaq was so immature about his conditioning, that the Lakers finally got so sick of him that they felt like they needed to trade him. And eventually he goes out and
hate someone to stay in worse shape just to spite them.
Hey, well, I just think he hated doing that extra work. That's why I always laugh when he talks about how, like, oh, I could have won those same 3 championships with T-Mac. It's like, I don't think you would have. I think you needed Kobe's like homicidal belief in conditioning and work ethic and stuff like that to even out Shaq's just flat out immaturity. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he got to Miami and got with somebody else who sees the game that way in Dwayne Wade and had success again. I don't think he would have done very well with T-Mac because T-Mac was so easygoing. That's why T-Mac was hurt as often as he was. But like, but yeah, with this though, with Luka, I would be so heated if I was a Mavs fan. Not at Luka specifically for finally getting into shape after, but at Nico specifically for, like, it's one thing you trade him and you say like, yeah, we were worried about this, we were worried about that, but they traded him and immediately leaked that he's fat and he's this and he's that and he likes beer too much. Like,
they didn't even they on the record, we're talking about defense wins championships. And, we like essentially by implication saying we don't think this guy will ever play defense.
Yeah. And if I'm not going to go so far as to say that is definitely why Luka looks the way that he does now. I still I started this episode talking about like mortality and extending his prime and all that stuff. But it's a non-zero chance. I'm sure his trainer had those quotes up in the gym when he was working out.
It's got to be a factor. And, I think that there are very real health reasons for him to have done this and to, that we've already talked about in terms of like how much, tread you're putting on the tires and like how much you're wearing out your brake pads and your knees and all that stuff. But, of course, like, I don't think that it's a coincidence that it came off of a major injury and someone basically doubting whether or not he could ever get to the level he was going to need to get to conditioning wise.
Yeah. We have a super comment here that we'll get to because I think it's the natural follow up to the stuff that we've been talking about. But first, we get to play this. Sorry, wrong one. R.I.P. that clip. I don't get to play it anymore. Shit. Well, no.
Let's see what Vučević looks like after a summer of beer and horse racing.
Technically, he's training there, so that's just like actually. All right, you guys want to see? Like, let me take you behind the scenes of what Luka Doncic's summers look like.
He just went around the whole world there. Good for Luka. He sprinted around the whole world just to get in shape for that men's health photo shoot.
Whatever it takes. All right, here's the actual clip that you guys need. All right, the question comes in from Appetizers and Sushi, which is an amazing name for an account asking a question about an athlete's conditioning. I'm happy that Luka's in shape, but why is he being lauded for doing his job? Kobe would have kicked Luka off the team too, just like he did Shaq. Actually, I kind of wonder if spending a little bit of time around LeBron, who has, again, fought off Father Time in ways we haven't seen from anybody in the NBA or most professional sports ever. I kind of wonder if like LeBron was like, hey, dude, I think LeBron is heading towards being a billionaire off of just basketball earnings. He's already a billionaire, by way of Nike and his other investments and stuff. He's going to be an owner of a team eventually. I actually think that's what the picture with Vučević's agent was more about than anything, was those guys laying the groundwork, working together to be prepared for whenever the NBA expands into Europe and getting a piece of that pie. But with like, do you think we are going overboard on being happy that Luka, professional athlete that he is, who makes the amount of money that he does, is he getting too much credit for this transformation?
I mean, are we lauding him that much? I mean, we're saying that it could end up being a positive thing, but I don't know that either of us are sitting here and like, oh my God, the commitment that it must have taken to be able to do this. And, it just really shows Luka, hardest working guy in the NBA. No, I mean, I think the reason he's getting credit for it is because he hadn't done it before. And so there's always going to be that more natural contrast there. And, there's a lot of guys who don't do it. He's certainly not the only one that was not the top of his offseason to-do list, And so I think that it's worth recognizing that he is doing it now. But yeah, I mean, I agree overall that like sometimes we make too much of this stuff, both in general and in terms of like, falling over ourselves to be like, oh my God, the commitment it must have taken to get in shape for your job of being in shape, like that does happen sometimes, but I still think that it's potentially impactful and it's worth recognizing. But yeah, I'm not going to like fall over myself backwards to praise him and say that, like this is unbelievable. And the Lakers were just so lucky that he would, that he would work this hard and whatever. It's like, yeah, like he probably should have been, but it's good that he is now.
I like this response from, I think it's Code for Life or COD for Life. Luka would have listened to Kobe, though. That's the difference. One of the points that Tim McMahon makes over and over and over in his book is how the Mavericks were really reluctant to step to Luka and to challenge him and to, like, I think you could make an argument that they were just as immature about that relationship as Luka was when it pertained to his conditioning and stuff like that.
They did him no favor by how much they bent over backwards for him right from the start and basically never held him accountable for any of the habits that they didn't like.
Yeah. And well, they like when they finally wanted to see a change there, they did so pretty passive aggressively,
Yeah.
And it's fun. They had, the comment that I just saw at the bottom right here, right? Brad says, so the Mavs front office didn't have any balls. They got him when they finally traded him, right?
Love this being up on the screen.
That's part of why I put it up. But yeah, like, but like they waited until they traded him to finally, aggressively, right? Active aggressively, try to get him to rethink the way that he went about his professionalism here. And if like I've always had my mentality with friendship is if I'm nervous,
it comes and goes, but banners hang forever. Oh, sorry.
Exactly. But like my mentality with friendship is like if I feel that if I start to feel like I might lose a friend or I'm losing, I'm starting to feel more and more detached from somebody. And if I feel like I start operating to maintain that connection, that connection's already over,
Yeah.
Like the moment that you feel like you have to walk on eggshells around somebody, that friendship isn't the friendship that you think it is. And I think with that relationship between the Mavs and Luka, as soon as you start treating that relationship as something that like you have to, you're reluctant to challenge that person, you're reluctant to try to get that person to be the better version of themselves, that relationship is over or it's not going to be as productive as it needed to be. And it wasn't, I'm not saying that Luka got to the Lakers and they immediately were like, hey dude, you got to get in shape now. But I think he had caught that message by way of the way everybody was talking about him after the trade. And specifically the Dallas Mavericks were talking about him after the trade. And we get to now reap the benefits of that kind of come to Jesus moment. And I we, again, shouts to Nico. Thank you for that. Thank you for not just talking shit on him on his way out the door, but also thanks to the Mavericks for mishandling that situation to the extent that they did before it finally arrived at trading him.
I'm still caught on the, like, I mean, your philosophy on friendship explains why you've never apologized to me for anything. So
what am I supposed to apologize for?
Yeah, see, exactly. There you go. The second you start trying to make someone else happy, the relationship's already over. You just have to be yourself unapologetically. You're like, I've never apologized to my wife for that reason. I've never done anything nice for her to get to convince her to stay bought in on the relationship, because you know what? If she doesn't want me at my yelling at her to do the dishes, then
My God, you have me yelling at her. Look, somehow, despite you thinking of my approach to friendship and relationships is that ugly, I have maintained a relationship with my wife for 20 something years. So maybe I'm doing something right, but yeah, I don't know. Like you've never
he's like,
felt
I always tell her to get in shape. I'm never afraid of the consequences.
Oh my God. Well, Jen's not watching this episode.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm. I don't know that I'm safe for our meetup next week, but
Friday she's just gonna show up with a shiv. She's gonna show up and be like, "Looks like you gained the weight Luka lost, Harrison."
And she would be right.
I want to go back to the optimism point, because I've been thinking about this a lot as it pertains to LeBron and the notion that maybe, just maybe, this team will be better than I think the team makes sense. I do think it needs, one or two more rotation level players. I think it probably needs one more starter. I would swap out Rui for a starting small forward personally. But I still, I can kind of see the track that they're on, right? I can see how they can arrive at this team being better than I think people are talking about them as, or I maybe even more specifically better than I think LeBron has feels about this team. Look, LeBron's getting to work, Luka's getting to work. I've maintained all summer that LeBron is going to be a Laker on opening night. I actually think he'll be a Laker on closing night as well. Why shouldn't I be as optimistic as I am right now, aside from the curse that puts on the Lakers? And maybe we should. All right,
that's actually maybe the best argument for it, is that it's going to put a curse on the team. But I would, if I'm going to answer seriously, I would say that I think that this team just really could use a consolidation trade of a couple guys into some sort of two-way wing. And I understand that's what every single team is trying to get. But the reason I bring this up specifically is that if you can find a way, that's what Rob should be using the first round pick for, and not worrying about can we sack up enough first round picks? If there is a trade on the table for, you could turn Rui and either Maxey or Gabe or some combination of them, or Dalton or whatever, into a legitimate starting two-way wing, then I think that is maybe the trade where all of this starts to make a lot more sense. But for right now, the thing that keeps giving me pause is the defense. Like I mentioned earlier, I just don't know how you're getting enough stops with the guys that we're expecting to start. And maybe swapping Rui for Smart, in the starting lineup, maybe that somewhat addresses that, but it's still, it's still an iffy defensive starting three, starting lineup.
Yeah, I guess.
And we also, again, we don't know that Marcus Smart, we have no idea how many games he's going to play.
Yeah. Well,
we have no idea how many games DeAndre Ayton's going to play. There are a lot of ifs here. I'm not trying to be the party pooper. I think there's a lot of talent here, and there's reasons to be optimistic that JJ can, over the course of a training camp and a regular season, sort of juice the most out of it. I know that you have playoff questions about him, but he's shown he's a very good regular season coach. And so I think there are reasons to be optimistic, but longer term, I'd feel better about their sort of actual competitive viability in the playoffs if they could make that consolidation trade. But I'm just not sure who that's for, and I'm not sure who's on the market. I think they're going to have to wait into the season a little bit to see if anyone does sort of shake loose that's not expected to be available.
Yeah, I think that is the best retort, is that even given the reasons for optimism, a lot of that optimism is based on ifs. And the point of an offseason is to address as many ifs and turn them into, conclusive, responses one way or another. And I think the Lakers,
and if anything, they've added more,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
They've added higher upside
so.
ifs than they had last year, but they're still ifs.
Yeah. I mean, like last year, well, I think again, an optimistic viewpoint would be they have taken some conclusive negatives and turned them at least into ifs. Yeah. Right. Like going into the offseason or into the postseason, it was like, well, we know this is probably going to turn out poorly with Jackson Hayes. And now it's like, well, if DeAndre Ayton wants another contract, maybe, this or that and the other. So I don't know. It's this Luka thing, though, like between him getting into shape, LeBron already getting to work, and the contract year type guys that they have here playing for them this season. I think there's plenty of
everyone should be motivated. You would think that everyone would at the very least be motivated and bought in to do everything within their power, much like Luka has done this offseason, clearly, to, give themselves the best shot at it. And maybe that is the best reason to be optimistic, is that everyone's sort of there. You could make the argument that everyone's individual goals are somewhat aligning with what the team goals should be. But, there's also, we've seen there are ways that goes wrong. If the team doesn't start out well, where, guys start saying, well, I should be playing more. I'm in a contract year, and the vibes can start. If I'm Rui, like, it's like, I'm up for an extension. What do you mean you want me to come off the bench? Like, there are ways that it can go rancid too, with that many ifs and that many sort of contract situations. You just don't know, which is why we spend an hour podcasting about it every day during the off season, because there's so many hypotheticals we can touch on.
Don't give away the secret sauce, Harrison. All right, that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge. Before Harrison gives away too many of my secrets or our secrets here. Thank you, Harrison, for hopping on short notice. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in the way that you have. Again, hit that subscribe button if you guys are new here. Hit that like button whether you're new or old. And if you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. And until the next time you guys hear from us, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. Oh, that was also Harrison. And Harrison, do you want to plug anything? Anything that you want to plug?
Yeah, my Sonos Ace headphones are they're incredible. So shout out to Sonos.
All right. From now on, I'm gonna have to specify apparently. Can you plug anything for SB Nation that isn't you just gave away a free sponsorship? So
well, they paid for my headphones, so that's sort of like a sponsorship.
That show doesn't benefit from that, Harrison.
I did, though. The show benefits from me having better headphones.
No, it doesn't.
Yes,
you sound the exact same.
I can hear you better. I can hear you better. Can't.
I guarantee you hear me just fine before.
My music sounds a lot better too. So
well, that's good, but that doesn't help the show.
Yeah, but now I got a couple more compliments into this live read.
That's like great.
That's right. We're doing pirate live reads on the Lakers Lounge. If you want to have your product sponsored here and featured here, offer me half as much as you are going to offer Anthony. I'm happy to just shoehorn it in at the end here.
Odyssey is going to tell me you can't have that guy on anymore.